So what is the purpose of installing 2 or more springs on each valve on the aircraft? To eliminate valve spring vibration or surging. Purpose of installing 2 or more springs. Every mechanical device has resonant frequency. If the valve is operating at resonant frequency of the valve spring, resonance frequency of the valve spring, the spring will lose its effectiveness and will surge, allowing the valve to float. To reduce the power output of an engine equipped with a constant speed prop and operating near maximum BMPE, manifold pressure is reduced with the throttle control before RPM is reduced with propeller control, BMEP. Manifold pressure is reduced with the throttle control before the RPM reduced with propeller control. Which of the following would indicate a general weak engine condition when operated with a fixed pitch propeller or test club? Lower than normal static RPM, full throttle operation. At what speed must a crankshaft turn if the cylinder of a 4-stroke cycle engine is to be fired 200 times a minute? 400 RPM. If the ignition switch is moved from both to either left or right during engine ground check, normal operation is usually indicated by a slight drop in the torque meter pressure. If the ignition switch is moved from both to either left or right during engine ground check, normal operation is usually indicated by a slight drop in the torque meter pressure indication. All certificated aircraft reciprocating engine have a dual ignition. During normal operation, both ignition systems are operating. During a magneto and engine ground check, the engine is operated at a speed specified by the engine manufacturer, and the ignition switch system is switched from both magnetos to each magneto separately. When the engine operates on a single magneto, the fuel air mixture in the cylinder is ignited at one point, only causing a slight drop in engine power. Drop in the torque meter pressure indication. When the engine operates on a single magneto, fuel or air mixture in the cylinder is ignited at one point, only causing a slight drop in engine power. The RPM will drop slightly. When the magneto check is performed, the drop in the torque meter pressure indication is a good supplement to the variation in RPM. What is likely to occur if the reciprocating engine is operated at high power setting before it is properly warmed up? Well, oil starvation of bearing and other parts. No aircraft engine should be operated at high power setting before it is properly warmed up and the oil is warm enough to flow freely through all the passages. High power operation with coal oil can cause oil starvation to the bearing and other parts. To what altitude will turbocharged engine maintain sea level pressure? Critical altitude. To what altitude will turbocharged engine maintain sea level pressure? The critical altitude of the turbocharged aircraft engine is the altitude above which turbochargers can no longer produce sea level manifold pressure of the engine. Manifold pressure and the engine cannot maintain its rated horsepower. What does valve overlap promotes? Valve overlap, better scavenging and cooling characteristics. Valve overlap is a portion of crankshaft rotation during which both the intake and the exhaust valve are off their seats at the same time. Adequate valve overlap increases the volumetric efficiency of the engine. It aids in scavenging off the burn exhaust gases, and it gives the engine better cooling characteristics. This is done by ensuring that the fuel or air charge in the cylinder is rich enough for proper operation and not diluted with exhaust gases. What does valve overlap promote? Better scavenging and cooling characteristics. Which of the following conditions would most likely lead to detonation? Which of the following characteristics would most likely lead to detonation? Use of fuel with too little octane rating. Use of fuel with too little an octane rating. Which of the following conditions would most likely lead to detonation? Use of fuel with too low an octane rating. Detonation is the uncontrolled burning of fuel inside the engine cylinder. The fuel or air mixture actually explodes, rather than burning evenly as it should. The octane rating of the fuel is measured of its detonation resistance. If the fuel with too low an octane rating is used, the fuel-air mixture is likely to detonate. When the engine is developing full power. C. Use of fuel with too low an octane rating. What tool is generally used to measure the crankshaft rotation in degrees? Timing disc. A top dead center indicator is used to show when the piston in the cylinder number 1 is on top of dead center. The timing disc is clamped to the propeller shaft and positioned so the pointer, which is held straight up by the weight on one end, points to 0 degrees. As the crankshaft is rotated, the pointer indicates on the scale of the timing disc the number of degrees crankshaft has rotated. Timing disc is clamped to the propeller shaft. How many of the following are factors in establishing the maximum compression ratio limitation of an aircraft engine? How many of the following are factors? Detonation characteristic of the fuel, design limitation of the engine, and the degree of supercharging. If the hot clearance is used to set the valves when the engine is cold, what occurs during operation of the engine? The valve will open late and close early. If a hot clearance is used to set the valves when the engine is cold, what occurs during operation of the engine? The valve will open late and close early. So, the cylinder head of an air-cooled engine expands much more than the pushrod. Because of this, air-cooled engines equipped with a solid valve lifters primarily to radial engines have a much larger valve clearance when the engine is hot, when it is cold. So the 5 events of a 4-stroke cycle engine: intake, compression, ignition, power, exhaust. ICP. Wait. Ignition, compression, ignition, intake, compression, ignition, power, and exhaust. What did I say? One of the best indicators of reciprocating engine combustion chamber problem is one of the best indicators of reciprocating engine combustion chamber problem is spark plug condition. Condition of the spark plugs taken from the cylinder of a reciprocating engine is a good indicator of the condition of the combustion chamber of the engine. Now, I have a little surprise for my viewers. Hopefully I have a viewer and not just me watching my own videos. So if it's that the case, I have a surprise for me. Okay? I have a surprise that I'm going to incorporate in my videos, and I think will be beneficial. I think it would be beneficial. I think I have to find that surprise. And I have a lot of people. I'm so happy I got done with my airframe. Why am I happy? Because now I only got one left. But to be honest, I'm not happy I'm leaving school. I really like it. I know it sounds strange. Let me get this paper and I'll be back. Yeah, I got 'em back. I knew where the paper was, but I wanted to see if I have one closer to me, you know? So yeah, so happens I bought a gaming laptop for over $2,000, and I thought I needed it. And I'm like, yo, I'm about to work with clean. I need the best computer there is. And yo, this computer is still like, giving me new surprises today, you know? Like I just found this new found out about this, what I'm doing right now here, you know. So since I'm in reciprocating engines, why not throw some reciprocating oral and practicals in there. So some reciprocating engines. Let's throw some reciprocating questions. Reciprocating oral and practicals in the mix. I have a project to turn in on Monday. Didn't even start that. But I want to go back to school this Monday different, you know. I want to get my stuff together. I want to know. I want to break things down. I want to go back to last class. I want to find out where I put my paperwork that I've been doing since power plant, since the beginning. And come back to the beginning. Stuff been so moving so fast lately. Like I want to be a genius in 2 days. After wasting the whole time on spring break. I love my spring break, man. I was with my son. We did a lot of stuff together. But I knew I wanted this spring break just to study, but I'd rather spend the time with my son, man, because it was worth it. Totally worth it, man. Now that I have this to do, let's do it. Stop wasting time. I just had a paper, but it's not the one I wanted, but I can still use it. So what we got here, we have a reciprocating section in this one. Doubt it. Yeah, I don't have one. Oh my god, bro. I really need to go over a couple other sections that I haven't started yet. Bear with me. So here's the reciprocating part. So I'm sorry, I'm not editing none of my videos. If somebody's even watching it, you know. One of the best indicators of the reciprocating engine combustion chamber problem is spark plug condition. On which part of the cylinder walls of a normally operating engine will the greatest amount of wear occur? Near the top of the cylinder. What is the purpose of the power check on a reciprocating engine? To determine satisfactory performance. What is the purpose of installing 2 or more springs on each valve in the aircraft engine? To eliminate valve spring vibration or surging. To eliminate the valve spring vibration and surging. To reduce the power output of the engine, equipped with a constant speed propeller and operating near maximum BMEP, Manifold pressure is reduced with the throttle control before the RPM is reduced with the propeller control. Which of the following would indicate a general weak engine condition when operated at a fixed pitch propeller or test club? Which of the following would indicate general weak spring engine condition when operating with a fixed pitch propeller or test club? Lower than normal static RPM. Full throttle operation. Lower than normal static RPM for throttle operation. Which of the following would indicate a general weak engine condition when operating with a fixed pitch propeller or a test club? Lower than normal static RPM. Full throttle operation. Now, time for some oral and practicals. What is the purpose of the crankshaft dynamic dampers? What is the purpose of crankshaft dynamic dampers? For this, I'm going to hop over to my cell, knock something out real quick, and give you a chance to think. But don't think too hard, because I got you. So, the purpose of the crankshaft dynamic dampers is to reduce engine vibration. The purpose of the crankshaft dynamic damper is to reduce engine vibration. What type of connecting rods are commonly found in radial engines? Master articulating rods. Master or articulated rod assemblies. Master and articulating rod assemblies. What is the purpose of the crankshaft dynamic damper? The crankshaft dynamic damper, what is the purpose of it? To reduce engine vibration. What are the different types of piston rings? Compression, oil control, and oil scraper. Compression, oil control, and oil scraper. What type of connected rod are commonly found in radial engines? Master or articulated rod assemblies? Yes, correct. Master and articulated rod assemblies. What is the purpose for dynamic dampers? Well, I believe dynamic dampers reduce the engine vibration. Correct. What type of connecting rods are commonly found in radial engines? Connecting rods. What type of connecting rods are usually found? I think the master and articulated rod assemblies. Yes, master and articulated rod assemblies. What are the different types of piston rings? Different type of piston rings. Compression, oil control, and oil scraper. Compression, oil control, and oil scraper. What is the purpose of an oil control ring? What is the purpose of oil control rings? Oil control rings regulate the thickness of the oil film on the cylinder wall. Oil control regulate the thickness of the oil film on the cylinder wall. Wow. What is the purpose of valve overlap? Valve overlap. Well, valve overlap permits better volumetric efficiency and lowers the cylinder operating temperatures. You said what? Well, I believe the valve overlap permits better volumetric efficiency and lowers the cylinder operating temperature. Well, what is the running valve clearance on engines equipped with hydraulic valve lifters? Oh, the running valve clearance on engines equipped with hydraulic valve lifters are 0. You said the running valve clearance on engines equipped with hydraulic valve lifters is 0? Yes. The running valve clearance on engines operating equipped with valve lifters is 0. Lack of combustion in that cylinder. When troubleshooting a running engine, malfunction. What does the coal cylinder indicate? When troubleshooting a running engine, malfunction. What does the coal cylinder indicate? Well, a coal cylinder indicates lack of combustion in that cylinder. What? Bro, a coal cylinder indicates lack of combustion in that cylinder. So when I'm troubleshooting an engine and it has a malfunction and I feel a coal cylinder, the others are hot, but this one is cold for some reason. You're telling me that there's lack of combustion in that cylinder? Yeah. That means there's lack of combustion in that particular cylinder. Okay, how about the type of bearings? What type of bearings are generally used in a reciprocating engine? Well, we got the plain bearing, we got the ball bearing, and we got the roller bearing. So there are 3 bearings that we use in all recips, and those are plain, ball, or roller bearings. Let's hop back to the top, see where we at. What's the purpose of the crankshaft dynamic dampers? Let me see, the crankshaft dynamic dampers. Well, I think they reduce engine vibration. Yes, you are correct. They reduce engine vibration. What type of connecting rod are commonly found in radial engines? Type of connecting rods. We got the master rod. We got the articulated rod assemblies. What are the different type of piston rings? Well, we got compression, we got oil control, we got oil scraper. How about this? What's the purpose of an oil control ring? Well, the oil control rings regulates the thickness of the oil film on cylinder walls. Alright, let's move on. Name at least one part of an inspection that should be made after a propeller strike. Not a sudden stoppage, just a propeller strike. Inspect the engine mounts. That's what I would do. That could be one part of an inspection that should be made. But hey, we got the crankcase you could inspect. You can inspect the nose section for damages, or Inspect the oil or oil screen. Filters for metal particles. Inspect the oil and oil screens or filters for metal particles. Inspect the propeller drive shaft or crankshaft for misalignment. You could do that also. Inspect propeller drive shaft, crankshaft for misalignment. Well, here they're saying, how's the cylinder barrel inspected for out of roundness? First of all, cylinder barrels. Out of roundness. Well, cylinder bore gauge, telescopic gauge, and micrometer, or an inside micrometer, can be used to measure the top of the cylinder and also at the skirt. Two readings should be taken 90 degrees to each other. What should be done to repair a loose stud in the engine crankcase? Well, first of all, you want to remove the stud. Inspect the hole. Okay? It may be necessary to use a suitable oversized stud. To remove the loose stud, inspect the hole for size and condition of the thread. It may be necessary to use a suitable oversized stud. One of the indication that a primer is leaking is when open during engine operation. The engine will not lose idle properly. The engine will not idle properly. Let's say that again. What is the indication that a primer is leaking or is open during engine operation? The engine will not idle properly. Okay, here's my pen. Wow, what a beautiful pen. I love these pens. Yeah. What are some indication of induction system leakage? Low power and uneven running. Man, I love when I reach the point in studying where I actually want to study this. You know what I'm saying? The sun is still sleeping. It's 8 o'clock. We went to bed like 2 o'clock last night. I woke up because, as you can see or hear, I'm coughing. I'm sick. But I have this test in 3 weeks, oral and practical, and I know I can pass it. I know I can pass it and go get this job. Bank account low. Credit cards, you know what I'm saying? Credit cards, run up. I'm trying to get this, not really the money, but I'm trying to get a job, a career finally. That I think that I'll be proud of myself. Thank God that I can do actually. So what is the purpose of the power check in a reciprocating engine? To determine satisfactory performance. Power check of the recip engine is checked to determine that the engine is developing the correct static RPM. Okay, before attempting to start a radial engine that has been shut down for more than 30 minutes, what about it? Check this out. What should we do? Well, let's read the explanation. I like reading the explanation. There are some cylinders below the center line of the radial engine, and it is possible for oil to drain down past the piston rings into these lower cylinders while the engine is not operating. When radial engine has been shut down for more than half shut down for more than half or so, it should be checked for a liquid lock. Liquid lock, huh? By pulling the propeller through the direction of normal rotation by hand for at least 2 complete revolutions of the crankshaft. If the oil is collected in any of the lower cylinders, the spark plugs must be removed from these cylinders and all the oil drained out. Wow, if the oil is collected in any of the lower cylinders, spark plug must be removed from these cylinders and all the oil drained out. Oh my god. So turn the propeller by hand 3 or 4 revolutions in the opposite direction, in the normal direction. Turn the propeller by hand 3 or 4 revolutions in the normal direction of rotation to check for liquid lock. So which of the following is characteristic of thrust bearing used in most radial engine? Which of the following is a characteristic of thrust bearing used in most radial engine? Thrust bearing used in most radial engine. Deep groove ball used in the thrust bearing in most radial engine. This type of bearing is the best of those listed for reducing friction while carrying both thrust and radial loads. If the intake valve is opened too early in the cycle of operation of the 4-stroke cycle engine, it may result in backfiring. If the intake valve is opened too early, the intake valve opens when the piston is moving upwards at the end of the exhaust stroke. Opening this point allows a lower pressure. Opening at this point allows the low pressure caused by inertia of exiting exhaust gases to assist in starting the fuel or air mixture flowing in the cylinder. If the intake valve opens too early, some of the burning exhaust gases could flow into the intake manifold and ignite the mixture. This would cause a backfiring in the induction system. Which condition would be least likely to cause by failed engine bearing? Which condition would be least likely to be caused by failed engine bearing? Low oil temperatures. Well, all the alternatives except low oil temperatures would likely to be caused by failed or failing engine bearings in the reciprocating engine. Low oil temperatures would be least likely of these alternatives. Which of the condition would be least likely caused by failed or failing engine bearing? So when you say least likely, low oil temperatures. So an excessive oil consumption will cause a failing engine bearing, and a high oil temperature will cause a failed engine bearing. But low oil temperatures is least likely to cause failed engine bearing. Direct mechanical push-pull carburetor heat control linkage should normally be adjusted so that they stop located on the diverter valve will be contacted. Direct mechanical push-pull carburetor heat control linkages should normally be adjusted so that stop located on the diverter valve will be contacted. So, when rigging any engine control in the aircraft, the stop on the component being actuated must be contacted before the stop in the cockpit. The control linkage has enough spring back in both directions that after the stop on the diverter valve is contacted, the control can be moved in both directions until it contacts the stop in the cockpit. When the control is released, it will spring back a few degrees. Direct mechanical push-pull carburetor heat control linkages should normally be adjusted so that the stop located on the diverter will be contacted before the stop at the control lever is reached in both hot and cold position. Okay, this one is gonna be good. I can tell. This one is gonna be good. But let's take a minute to read a couple OMPs. What is an indication that the primer is leaking or open during engine operation? Engine will not idle properly. What are some indications of induction system leakage? Low power and uneven running. What are some indications of induction system leakage? Low power and uneven running. What may be the result of incorrect installation of piston rings? Excessive oil consumption. What may be the result of incorrect installation of piston rings? Excessive oil consumption. What procedure should be followed when valve blow-bys is indicated by a hissing sound on the reciprocating engine when pulling the propeller through? Perform a cylinder compression test to identify faulty cylinders. Perform a cylinder compression test to identify faulty cylinders. Wow. What procedure should be followed when valve blow-by is indicated? Perform compression test to identify faulty cylinders. So when you hear a hissing sound, that's air leakage. The actual power delivered to the propeller of an aircraft engine is called brake horsepower. The volume of a cylinder equals 70 cubic inches. When the piston is at bottom center, the piston is at top of the cylinder, the volume equals 10 cubic inches. What is the compression ratio for that? 7:1. The compression ratio of the reciprocating engine is the ratio of the volume of cylinder with piston at bottom of its stroke to the volume of the cylinder with the piston at the top of its stroke. If the cylinder has a volume of 70 cubic inches with the piston at the bottom of its stroke and a 10 cubic engine at the piston at the top of its stroke, compression ratio is 7:1. Which of the following engine servicing operation generally requires engine pre-oiling prior to starting the engine? Which of the following engine servicing operation generally requires engine pre-oiling prior to starting the engine? Engine oil and filter change, engine installation. Which of the following engine servicing operation generally requires engine pre-oiling prior to starting the engine? Engine installation. By use of a differential pressure compression tester, it is determined that cylinder 3 of 9-cylinder radial engine will not hold pressure after the crankshaft has been rotated 260 degrees on top dead center. How can this indication usually be interpreted? It's normal for a cylinder not to hold air pressure when the piston is near the bottom of its power stroke and the exhaust valve is open. So which of the following engine servicing operation generally requires engine pre-oiling prior to starting the engine? Engine installation. A characteristic of dynafocal engine mounts as applied to an aircraft reciprocating engine is that the characteristics of dynafocal engine mounts is applied to an aircraft reciprocating engine is that the shaft mounts point towards the engine's center of gravity. If the engine with a stroke of 6 engine is operated at 2000 RPM, the piston movement within the cylinder will be so the piston in the reciprocating engine is not moving when it is at top and bottom of its stroke. As it leaves the top dead center, it accelerates from 0 velocity to a maximum velocity, which is reached when it is 90 degrees beyond top dead center. It then decelerates to 0 velocity at bottom dead center. I don't know what you're talking about there. If an engine with a stroke of 6 inches is operated at 2000 RPM, okay, 2000, the piston movement within the cylinder will be the engine with a stroke of 6. You feel me? The piston in the reciprocating engine is not moving when it's at top and bottom of its stroke. As it leaves the top dead center, it accelerates from 0 velocity to a maximum velocity, which is reached when it is 90 degrees beyond top center. It then decelerates to 0 velocity at bottom dead center. So at maximum velocity of 90 degrees after top dead center. We have to come back to that one because it's kind of confusing. If the crankshaft run out reading in the radial, if the crankshaft run out readings on the radial indicator are plus 0.002 inches and minus, boom, I'm going to say it's 0.005. condition that can occur in the radial engines but is unlikely to occur in the horizontal opposed engine is hydraulic lock. So radial and inverted engines have some cylinder below the crankcase. When the engine is idle, oil is leaked from the crankcase past the piston ring and filled in the combustion chamber. This condition is called a hydraulic lock. So an increase in manifold pressure with a constant RPM will cause the bearing nose and engine to. An increase in manifold pressure with a constant RPM will cause the bearing nose to increase. The cylinder pressure applied to the crankshaft through the connecting rod bearings is determined by the compression ratio of the engine and the manifold pressure. The manifold pressure of the given RPM is increased, the bearing nose imposed on the crankshaft will increase. What is an indication that the primer leaking or is open during an operation? What is an indication that the primer is leaking or is open during engine op? Engine will not idle properly. What are some indications of induction system leakage? Low power and uneven running. What may be the result of incorrect installation of piston rings? Excessive oil consumption. What procedure should be followed when valve blow-by is indicated by a hissing sound on a reciprocating engine when pulling the propeller through? Perform a cylinder compression test to identify the faulty cylinders. What factor about the condition of an engine can be learned by studying the results of compression tests? The results of compression tests determine if the valve piston rings and pistons is adequately sealing. What factor about condition of an engine can be learned? What factors about condition of an engine can be learned by studying the results of compression tests? The result of a compression test determines if the valve piston rings and piston are adequately sealing. Okay. How are piston gaps installed relative to each other on a piston and why? Compression ring gaps should be installed in staggered positions around the piston in order to prevent excessive blow-by. Compression ring gaps should be installed in staggered position around the piston in order to prevent excessive blow-by. What is meant when it is said that an engine part is within serviceable limits? A part that is within serviceable limits will not likely wear to the point of causing engine failure within the next time between overhaul. A part that is in serviceable limits will not likely wear to the point of causing engine failure within the next time between overhauls. Time before overhaul interval. Okay, I got one for you. 2 more oral and practicals and we'll go back over it and then boom. What's that smell? think the neighbors are chopping it up. Get it? Chopping it up. It's crazy, man. When you live in these houses, you smell everything the neighbor is doing. I can tell when you're taking a dump, smoking. I can tell when they wake up and yawn. So when an engine is rebuilt by the manufacturer, how is its operating history affected? When an engine is rebuilt by the manufacturer, how is its operating history affected? A rebuilt engine is considered to have no previous operating history and can therefore be issued a zero-time record. An engine is rebuilt by the manufacturer. How is its operating history affected? A rebuilt engine is considered to have no previous operating history, can therefore be issued zero-time record. What is used in the aircraft engine to help prevent valve surge or float from occurring? Two or more springs in each valve. Two or more springs on each valve. I wonder if I will build or design my own engine in the future. I wonder how I get to that level to be able to, know how to design my own engine. Like, do I start here or what book do I buy? I want to be thinking on like the Wright brothers level, man. I want their spirit to incorporate in me, man. Like, I want to know these guys, be like these guys. You know what I'm saying? I want to be on the Wright brothers level. How do I get to that point? Who do I talk to? Is there a book I should read? I might watch a YouTube video. That sounds a little bit more, yeah. So an increase in the manifold pressure with a constant RPM will cause the bearing load in engines to an increase in manifold pressure with a constant RPM will cause the bearing load in an engine to increase. So the cylinder pressure applied to a crankshaft through the connecting rod bearing is determined by compression ratio of the engine and manifold pressure. The manifold pressure for a given RPM is increased. The bearing load imposed on the crankshaft will increase. Valve overlap is defined as a number of degrees. Valve overlap is defined as the number of degrees of crankshaft travel. A. During which both valves are off their seats. So valve overlap is a number of degrees of crankshaft rotation that both the intake and exhaust valve are off their seats at the end of the exhaust stroke and the beginning of the intake stroke. Valve overlap allows a great charge of fuel-air mixture to be inducted into the cylinder. Valve overlap allows a greater charge of fuel or air mixture to be inducted into the cylinder. Okay? During which both valves are off their seats. So valve overlap is defined as the number of degrees of crankshaft travel during which both valves are off their seats. We're going to wrap it up right here. Continue later. You're not gonna miss out on anything, I promise. You're not gonna miss out on anything. I am here for you. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna do this step by step, one by one, day by day. I'm dead ass.